Music plays a lot of different roles at the University of Michigan, from international cultural exchanges to the heart of the university's campus. In fact, one building, considered by many to be the symbol of the university, is filled with musical offices and an instrument that is a story in itself. That building and the instrument are turning 75 years old this year, and to mark the occasion, they got a makeover that will keep the music coming for decades. Our correspondent and part-time pianist, Eva Rosenwald, has the story.
The Burton Memorial Tower is a landmark on the University of Michigan's central campus. It's part clock, part building, but it also houses a musical instrument known as a carillon, a type of instrument which, according to Professor Stephen Ball, was first developed almost accidentally in the days when cities told their residents what time it was.
With the coming of the railroad, we have, for the first time, absolute time, where 12 o'clock in one place is the same as 12 o'clock in another. But previous to that, each city had its own separate time zone. And so the sounding of the hours by the civic clock was something every city had. It was a public service that the city provided. By about the 14th century, somebody came up with the idea of, well, perhaps we could warn people the hour is going to strike. And they would sound a small warning on a bell or a set of bells, usually to sound what we now think of as the quarter chime. And as this idea evolved, one city, well, if the city next door has 5 bells and we're going to buy a clock, well, our clock chime should have at least 7. And so, it's this one-upsmanship. And so these sets of bells that sounded before the hour strike just grew in size and number until by about certainly the 15th century, you have accounts of people playing music on them. And that was the origin of the carillon. The University of Michigan has a very important role in the history of this instrument. In 1936, when Taylor designed this instrument, they had built many carillons previously, but the mechanical designs and the tonal concept of this instrument were newly thought out. This marks the point of demarcation for the modern carillon. It's the oldest school in North America for the study of carillon and campanology. It's the first university to have 2 bell towers, 2 separate carillon towers. And we're also the first university now to offer a course in bell founding. Let's tell them to do like a half a mil and see what that does. Because I'm really worried about letting anything else drift too far flat.
Okay.
You see this sort of cross-pollination happening, which is what created the instrument in the first place. I mean, the carillon is the intersection of art and science and music all at the same time.
And while Stephen's students cast and lathe relatively small bells, the concepts are the same even on the grandest scale.
We are actually inside the largest bell in the carillon, and you can see on the walls here, these are the tuning marks left by the lathe. This entire 12-ton mass, after it was cast, was taken out of the mold, turned upside down on a milling machine, and they very carefully removed some of the material on the side of the bell wall here. And that tuning has remained current right till today. The bell sounds the same as it did in 1936.
The sheer scale of the instrument is overwhelming, but Stephen convinced me to take a spin on the practice keyboard.
So what I suggest doing, let's just start with a scale. So ready? Now you want to keep your hand, let's keep going, just going back up. You want to keep your hands as close to the keys as possible. And if you want it to be louder or softer, it's just how much more force you put into the key.
After a few scales, it was time for some real music.
Oops, I did the wrong hands, I think. Oops.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Very nice job. So that's how the system works.
After way too little practice for my taste, it was time for the real thing. A public performance on Michigan's North Campus Carillon in the Lurie Tower.
Beautiful. Just beautiful. Do you like it?
I think it's fabulous.
Good. It's a very physical instrument. So I mean, it's like the piano because you can really, put force into it, but you really have to use your body weight, especially in the lower bells.
Yes.
So
I can't wait to come and hear your concerts now.
Back on Central Campus, the university's original Carillon has undergone an exhaustive restoration to mark the 500th anniversary of carillons as an instrument and the 75th anniversary of Michigan's iconic Burton Tower.
When I was first a student here, I discovered that the original 1936 bells were not all in the tower. The upper half, I would say probably 23 bells, had been replaced in 1974 by a previous carillionaire. But what's very unusual is that the original bells were saved. Later, in 1977, the original playing keyboard was replaced. So what this restoration has done is to return the original 1936 keyboard and to return all the original 1936 bells.
James Harris is a lifelong resident of Ann Arbor, University of Michigan alumnus, and retired faculty member.
So how similar is this to the old Carillon?
Well, dimensionally it's identical.
The Carillon in Burton Tower has been a part of his life for as long as he can remember.
My parents' name is down on the bronze plaque when this building was built. Yeah, and so that was like 80 years ago.
Would you come to campus just specifically to listen to Stephen playing?
Oh yes, sure.
Regularly? Is that something that you would do?
We would do it regularly. Then he had summer series where we came to all of them.
You put out a chair out front?
Usually we had picnics.
Nice.
And a lot of people did. And also when I taught here at the university, my office is quite close by, so when my windows were open, of course I could hear the carillon all the time.
Oh, nice.
I mean, this is a really integral part of this campus. It's actually iconic.
Dr. Harris helped return the original keyboard from a museum storage facility in Cincinnati to its rightful home in the Burton Tower. That achievement has been memorialized on the Carillon's refurbished music stand, which was unveiled at a Carillon conference that welcomed players from around the world.
My wife plays a carillon in Sydney at the university, made by the same builder. It has the same number of bells, but the biggest bell is only 4 tons, so it goes up into much smaller bells than this one. When you have these very large bells, the largest one is 12 tons. When they play together in a chime, it's a strange sound that awakens emotions and feelings that probably our ancestors had 1,000 years ago.
The day-long event culminated in a world premiere performance of an original Carillon score for the classic Lon Chaney, Phantom of the Opera, played live by Stephen for a crowded outdoor screening.
As far as we know, this is the second time in history that a silent film has ever been accompanied by a carillon. It's the first time we've ever did it with a soprano. I'm slightly terrified because I've had 20 minutes of time total in which to play the instrument and get used to its current configuration. Very excited, and it's going to be a fun night. We'll make magic.
It was a grand public unveiling of the restored Carillon, complete with the original keyboard and bells from 1936. And the sound was worth the effort.
It's intensely deep and rich, dark. It's one of the most majestic sounds I've ever heard. It's just fantastic.